my name is Amelia, and I'm an art teacher with Artists for Kids in the North Vancouver School District. This year, we are bringing you the AFK ArtReach video series, and in this series, we feature art activities that can be done at school, at home, and in many cases outdoors, and you can find this video series on the AFK website. Now, for many years, the North Vancouver School District has partnered with the Vancouver Aquarium to develop learning experiences for students in which they explore marine biology through art. And so the art activity that I'm going to share with you in this video connects to the topic of seaforestation. And seaforestation is the act of restoring, planting, managing, and caring for underwater seaweed forests. The art activity that I'll share with you was originally developed by North Vancouver art teacher Corey Bogan for his secondary art students at Handsworth Secondary. And I've included his original lesson plan as a link on the AFK website underneath this video. Now, I shared a version of this lesson with students at a class at Cleveland Elementary this past spring. So as I share with you the steps for this lesson in this video, I will also show you how the students in that class made their art. In this video, I will share with you an activity in which we will depict fish species and seaweed species that can be found in the Pacific Northwest, in the area where we live. And so as you carry out this activity, you can consider the following questions. What is seaforestation, and how can it benefit our natural environment? And how can you use layering, movement, negative space, and color in a painting of a fish in an underwater environment?
Hello, my name is Amy Chung, and I am a UBC teacher candidate working with Artists for Kids. I'm going to talk a little bit about what seaforestation is. Before carrying out this activity, I would highly encourage your class to explore the topic of seaforestation. There are many online resources for the topic. If you explore the OceanWise website, as we've listed below, there's an abundance of information, including several videos. As Amelia has mentioned before, OceanWise describes seaforestation as the act of restoring, planting, managing, and caring for underwater seaweed forests. Seaweed forests are a rich habitat for marine life and also protect the coast from the impacts of extreme weather events. They naturally capture carbon in large volumes in seaweed tissue, some of which can get trapped in the ocean floor for centuries. In this way, seaforestation can be a new method to take carbon dioxide from the carbon cycle and could provide a powerful contribution to addressing global climate risk. Seaweeds grow faster than terrestrial plants and can be harvested to be used in a variety of ways. In fact, there's currently a growing market for seaweed products. Aside from food for humans, they can be used in everything from cosmetics to agriculture. For this project, we've identified 4 different species of seaweeds found in the Pacific Northwest. These will serve as inspiration for our project. They are rockweed, bull kelp, flattened acid kelp, and Turkish washcloth seaweed. Have you seen these types of seaweed when you've visited beaches on the North Shore? The fish we'll be representing in our art project are salmon shark, red-banded rockfish, and sockeye salmon.
The following are the art materials that you will need to do this art activity. You will also need a class set of fish tracers, as you can see in this image, and I've provided in a PDF in a link below this video an image that you can trace and cut out of these fish. And also you can optionally use a set of circle tracers that are each 20 centimeters in diameter. And if you're a teacher in the North Vancouver School District, you can save yourself some cutting time and get in touch with us at Artists for Kids, and we can loan you a class set of tracers. So if you would like to look into this option, you can get in touch with us, and I have included an email below. For the first step in our project, you will need your square piece of paper that's 8 inches by 8 inches, and you will need a pencil and an eraser. And the very first thing we're going to do is just write our names on the back of the piece of paper. But as you do this, I would like you to experiment with using a very light pencil line. And this is because as we move forward with this project, we will need to use a light pencil line so we can very easily erase it. So as you can see here, when I erase my pencil line, you can barely even see that I had drawn there. But if I use a very dark pencil line like this, and then try to erase it, you can see that I cannot get those lines off the paper. So as you write your name on the back of the piece of paper, just practice using a very light pencil line. And once you've done that, you can flip your piece of paper over, and it would be great if you could project the image of the 4 species of seaweed up on the board in your classroom, or you could print that image out as well. And that image is included in the PDF that is linked underneath this video. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to draw at least 3 species of seaweed on our piece of paper, nice and big. So I'm going to start, so again, using a really nice and light pencil line, I'm going to start drawing the Turkish washcloth seaweed. And you choose whichever seaweed you would like to draw for this project. And notice how big my drawing is. This is really important for this project. So for example, if I drew just a teensy tiny little seaweed down at the bottom here, that wouldn't work very well for this project. I want you to draw your seaweed really nice and big. And so now I'm going to draw on this side of my paper some of that flattened acid kelp. And then I'm going to draw one more type of seaweed, and this time my seaweed is going to overlap with one of my other drawings. And so I'm going to draw the bull kelp this time, and you can see here it's coming sloping right up. So you want at least some of your seaweed to be overlapping on top of one another. And you can see that parts of my bull kelp are going right off the edge of my piece of paper as well. Also, as I've been drawing my seaweed shapes on my paper, I've been giving some thought to the spaces around those shapes. These are my negative spaces here. So the spaces that I'm pointing out in my drawing. So my actual seaweed shapes are my positive shapes, and then these are my negative spaces. And so this is a really important aspect of composition that we can think about when we create an artwork, making our positive shapes interesting, but also the spaces around them. So give some thought to the negative spaces in your drawing. For the next step in our project, you will need your fish tracers. So here you can see I have a set of tracers with 3 different fish represented. So I think for my project, I am going to choose the red-banded rockfish. And so now I'm going to choose a place in my drawing where my red-banded rockfish will be swimming. Maybe I'll even put it kind of on an angle. So you could be choosing to put yours maybe close to the top of your artwork, near the bottom, on an angle, swimming upwards. Give some careful thought to how you will place your fish before you draw it. really think carefully about using the light pencil line here. Okay, so now I will take off my stencil, and wow, what a jumble of lines and shapes. So now I need to kind of sort these out and decide on which lines I'm going to keep in my artwork and which lines I'm going to remove by erasing. And so what I'm going to do is think about at least one or even two of my drawings of seaweed being in front of my fish, and then some of them being behind my fish. And this is going to create the effect of my artwork looking three-dimensional, and even it's going to add to a sense of motion in my artwork. So I'm going to make it look like the fish is behind this particular piece of seaweed. So what I'm going to do is carefully erase all of the parts of my fish that are in front of that seaweed. So here you can see I have erased that part of my fish's tail. And this is a little bit of a puzzle here, so take your time. And if you make a mistake, you can always draw the lines back in again. Here I will erase this little part of the fish's tail and this part. And so once I've done that, you can see that it appears as if this seaweed is in front of my fish. I forgot this little part as well. And then I can go back and fix up those lines that I erased. So I'm going to keep doing that until I've decided for all of the objects I've drawn in my artwork, which are in front and which are behind. But I would say try to make at least one, if not two, of your seaweed drawings popping up in front of your fish. So here you can see I have finished erasing all of my extra lines. And so now that I've done that, it appears as if these two pieces of seaweed are in front of my fish, and that this piece of bull kelp is behind my fish and behind the other pieces of seaweed. What we're doing now is choosing different shades of green. And so if we look at the color wheel here, we can see if the three colors that are next to one another on this color wheel are called analogous colors. So these three shades of green, for example, yellow green, green, and blue green, are analogous colors. And so we will be choosing three analogous colors to color in our seaweed. So I've chosen these three greens, and I'm going to use one color for each piece of seaweed. And so I'll start with this color, and I'm going to use quite a hard pressure while I am coloring with the pastel. I'm pressing quite hard so that I do not see any of the white paper underneath my pastel color. And one thing you could do is start by outlining the shape of your seaweed with your oil pastel, and then filling in inside of that outline afterwards. That can kind of help you to keep the original shape that you drew. Now for the next step in my project, I'm going to need more oil pastels, this time in a warm color palette. And we can look again at the color wheel. So for my seaweed, I used colors kind of in this range. And now if I look directly across the color wheel from those colors I was just using, I can see the colors that are complementary to the green. So this red is directly across the color wheel, so this would be the complementary color to that green. And so now I'm going to use some colors, we could also call them warm colors, over on this side of the color wheel. And I'm going to use them to add some details to my fish. And so you could use 3, even 4 different colors, all in this kind of warm color palette over on this side of the color wheel. And now you could look at some of the pictures of the fish that you can see here to get ideas for details that you could add to your fish in your artwork. And these fish will not be super realistic, especially the shark would not have any warm colors like these on its body. But when we use these complementary colors, the warm colors next to the cool colors, they're really going to cause each other to pop out. We're really going to see that fish, the warm fish next to the cool seaweed. And so the first thing that you should do is choose one of your warm color pastels and outline your fish shape using a really nice dark line, using really hard pressure with your hand. And then I'm going to look at the images of the fish. In my case, I am looking at the red-banded rockfish, and I will notice some of the details on the fish's body, and will include some of those in my artwork here. And I am not completely filling in the entire body of my fish. I want to make sure that there are still some white spaces left over when I am finished with my oil pastel work, because when I've done this step, I'm going to be doing some painting. And I want to have some sections of my fish still left white so that I can add some painted details to my fish. Okay, so here you can see I have added quite a bit of detail to my fish using really nice dark color, and I still have some white spaces left inside the fish that I will be painting in just a moment. For our next step, we're going to need our watercolor paints. You will also need a water pot and your brush. And you can see I have also covered my workspace with some paper to protect it from the paint. And so we're going to begin by painting in these white spaces that we left inside our fish. And to do that, we are going to use warm colors. So those same colors we talked about for coloring inside the fish, these ones on this side of the color wheel. I'm going to use quite a bit of water as I do this. I want my paint to be nice and watery. And I'm going to try and use 2, maybe even 3 different warm colors to paint the inside of my fish. Okay, and now that I have painted my fish, I'm washing my brush really well. And the last step in my project is going to be to paint in this white space, the negative space that we talked about. And this will be my water. And so now I will be using different shades of blue. So on my palette, I've got a kind of a lighter blue down here. And perhaps I'll start with that light blue up at the top, adding still quite a lot of water to my paint. And I'm being careful not to paint on top of my fish. So as I get close to the fish, I'm just taking my time, painting carefully around the body of the fish. And as I work my way down the page, I'm going to switch over and start using a darker blue. Maybe showing that the water is getting deeper. Here you can see I have finished painting in my water in my artwork, and I have let it dry. And I could complete a last optional step for this project. And to do this, I could use a circle tracer and place it on my artwork, trace around it with a pencil, and then cut that shape out. You can see that I did this for this example. And the students that I worked with at Cleveland Elementary also traced this circle shape and cut it out to finish their paintings. And before we did this, we talked about where we see circle shapes in underwater environments. For example, in fish eggs and bubbles, or even the portals of submarines and boats. In these two examples, you can see that I was able to capture a feeling of movement in my underwater scenes. It looks like my fish is kind of floating through the water in and amongst the seaweed, with some of the seaweed behind it and some in front. And so I was able to capture this feeling of motion or movement using layers in my artwork. Once you finish your paintings, display them all as a class. What interesting differences and similarities do you notice amongst your paintings? We would absolutely love to see images of your finished artwork. You can share pictures with us via Instagram or by email. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed creating paintings of underwater scenes.